As I'm writing this, I cannot help but feel that my priorities are a bit warped. Because in a show with so much to talk about, so much to praise in regards to its premise, its execution, its phenomenal main and supporting cast, and its almost mind-boggling degree of representation of all kinds, here I am, writing a video essay on an angsty white boy and how his archetype is so oversaturated and so poorly handled in modern media that it overshadows the actual quality of his current character arc. Ah well, it's a job. So we all love the Owl House. Like, honestly, all of us. Even you, watching right now, who have never even seen the show. You love it. You don't know it yet, but you do, because there's so much to love, especially with how Season 2 has been playing out so far with home run after home run. Already, we've had some phenomenal character work with Luce, Eden, and King. We've seen them go even more hog wild with the representation from race to gender identity to orientation to the differently abled. And of course, holy shit, Lumity is legit canon and we're not even through the first half of Season 2. Dana, you absolute mad lass, I will give you my firstborn. Now, that isn't to say that the show doesn't have its problems, as we've talked about in the past. There is an unfortunate adherence to a select few overdone tropes, pockets of undue character inequity, and the rapid-fire pace of the show, while often a strong point, tends to fumble on particular character arcs. Hey, they put her on a bus, so I'm good. These problems, while far from a deal breaker for the show, are nonetheless present and nonetheless something to address. And there's a story beat that threatens to encapsulate all of these problems in the form of Hunter, the Golden Guard. Yeah, I had apprehensions about this guy since before we knew his name. Hell, since before we even saw his entire face. When we saw that sneak peek of him drawn by Dana Terrace a while back, I was like, oh fuck, we're getting Neverith Blade Strife except played completely straight. The Raylos are gonna flock to this guy. In truth, the hiatus between the first and second season was a time where I was anxious about the direction the rest of the show would take. After it was revealed that the second season was going to be darker, and with young blood, old souls leaving at least 3 open plot threads unresolved by the end, I was starting to worry that the second season was going to be where it all went to shit. Thankfully, most of my anxieties proved to be for naught. Despite the promise of a darker story going forward, the tone of the show has yet to actually plummet into Todd McFarlane levels of edgy. The Lumity plot thread was handled better than I could have ever hoped for. Lilith, well, her redemption was shit, but she's gotten out of our hair by the 4th episode, so I'll tolerate it. All that was left was the matter of the Golden Guard, and at least in his debut episode, he was surprisingly entertaining. He quipped, he was a show-off, and struck a pleasant balance between threatening and goofy. Also, it's probably nothing, but bye! Bye! So yeah, Stranger Tides is among my favorite episodes of the second season so far because of the utter relief I felt knowing that the show was still gonna be good going forward. Gigi's performance being one of the things to initially put my mind at ease. Then came Hunting for Palisman, and I was like, oh, okay, this is more in line with what I was expecting. Suddenly, he's a no-nonsense grump with a tragic backstory and a troubled home life that perfectly encapsulates everything fangirls absolutely love. It's unfortunately impossible to really talk about Hunter without bringing up any of his contemporaries, that being the conga line of angsty white or white-passing characters that we've been getting for at least the past 20 years. He really fits into that mold, which is impossible to deny at this point. But rather than trying to hash out absolutely all of them, which would take all fucking night, or going through the obvious comparisons, I'm gonna be a smidge indulgent and pick one that most of you might not be familiar with. Arkan. Arkan, for those not in the know-how, is the primary antagonist of Star Wars Knights of the Fallen Empire, one of the most notable expansions of the Old Republic MMO. He rules the eternal empire of Zakul after his father, the primary villain of the entire damn game, is seemingly killed. From there, he spends the next 5 years subjugating the galaxy, being a by-the-numbers tyrant who silences dissenters with death, turns a populated city into a glass floor just to show off, and generally being so big a threat that the Jedi and the Sith actually have to work together to take him down. As a villain intended to hype up the inevitable confrontation, he's fine, but near the tail end of the expansion, they try to lay on his sympathetic backstory and chance for redemption onto the player. This approach to Arkan's character was awful. Objectively and unequivocally awful. They spent several chapters of the story just to show how vile, scummy, and absolutely evil this guy is, only for his mother to come in and insist that he can change. The load bearer for this tragic backstory, in quotations, was that his father Valkorion was apparently abusive, that he treated his children like pieces on a chessboard rather than actual children. And yeah, that does sound like something Valkorion would do. I mean, we see him literally eat all life on a planet. Being a shitty father is hardly a stretch. But the problem is that, in Arkin's case, we are only ever told about the abuse he suffered, while we are shown all the evil things that Arkin is doing throughout the course of the expansion. And by the end of that, we are expected to believe that he is a victim and can change? It's such a piss-weak attempt at depth that the very next expansion starts with the evil literally being MacGuffin out of him at the behest of his mother, and then it's just like, I am a good guy now. By contrast, Arkin's sister Valen is a character that goes through a heavy amount of abuse at Valkorian's hands, the likes of which we actually see, and the player is given no other option than to just put her down like old Yeller. She had much more cause to appear sympathetic in the narrative, but because the game industry is largely run by misogynists, she doesn't get the chance of redemption that Arkin gets. This only stands to make Arkin look worse and makes me feel all the more happy I killed the ball bastard every chance I got. Anyway, circling back to the Owl House, Hunter is notable in that, while sharing a great many story beats with Arkin, Hunter's arc is handled so much better across 2.5 episodes than Arkin's is across several expansions. Once the mask comes off, we see that Hunter is very much in fact a victim of circumstance, that circumstance being the absence of magic of his own and being right under the thumb of Emperor Belos. Unlike with Valkorian, we actually see the abuse this Emperor commits against this actual child, and it's handled with an insane degree of nuance. See, the thing about abuse is that it's not always blatant. You actually have to look carefully to see the way one person can lord their power over another when, at first glance, it can seem harmless or even endearing. The way Belos talks to Hunter, especially in the first scene we see them together, seems familial and paternal, praising the boy for his dependability and saying that he's too valuable an asset to use recklessly. However, the choice of words is carefully crafted to exhibit control and secure Hunter's loyalty to him. It's amazingly clever because if you're only half paying attention, it can come off as genuine and fatherly. Then this scene happens.
My apologies. I spoke out of turn. It won't happen again.
These outbursts are painful, and so is watching you fail. I know you can do better, Hunter.
That Belos actually threatened Hunter, this teenage kid, with violence, and that near miss happening right next to his face scar, cements the actual relationship these two have and contextualizes their conversations going forward. Belos is not above causing physical harm to Hunter and likely has done it in the past, but the truly insidious part of it all is that he knows exactly what to say to keep Hunter from expecting or demanding better from his uncle, saying shit like, "The Titan has big plans for you," or "I know you can do better." Not to mention, the fact that he supposedly took Hunter in and gave him artificial magic would do wonders to make the boy see him in an almost reverent light. Giving Hunter just a taste of the validation, a ghost of the fatherly love that this boy is craving, is enough to make him want to stay loyal and help with his plans. It's why he refuses every hand offered to him by Luz or Amity. As sad as it is, he loves Belos as much as he fears him, and Belos uses that to his full advantage. The closest thing this boy has to an actual support system are the people he's tried to kill and a bird. How fucking sad is that? So yes, objectively, in a vacuum, Hunter's character story so far is good. However, I'm already sick of him, because I've been sick of characters like him for a good long while. The bad boy is fucking everywhere at the moment, and I cannot bring myself to care about any of them, even the ones that are handled well. This is especially egregious because the Owl House is a show filled with such wonderful characters and ideas that are dying to be fleshed out, and here we are treading painfully familiar ground with blonde Nevereth and taking focus away from other more interesting things. I've gone on record saying that Amity suffered a similar problem, having a character design and story arc that was rather tropey compared to her peers, and exploring her took focus away from other characters like Willow or Gus. But I was able to forgive that on the basis of her breaking the mold through her budding relationship with Luz, which is now an actual relationship. And throughout season 2, we've actually had some great character work with her as they do creative things with her character design. Hunter, by comparison, just doesn't have anything new or interesting to bring to the table apart from the execution of his story. And whereas Amity's archetype was only somewhat played out in recent years, Hunter's archetype has been damn near omnipresent in everything. And now his presence in the story takes the problem we saw with Amity and makes it even worse, because now there are even more plot threads congesting the tightly paced story and taking focus away from the rest of the supporting cast. Speaking of, it hasn't helped matters that since his last 2 episodes, people have been shipping Hunter with both Luz and Amity. I mean, Luz I kinda get. She's an established bisexual character and easy for the audience to project onto. But Amity? The girl is a confirmed lesbian. You're really gonna ship her with a guy, you fucking creeps? You're really gonna pull that Fire Emblem shit here? If you absolutely have to ship Hunter with someone because you need someone to fix your ooh-woo bad but sad boy, why not pick someone other than the two people already in a loving and supporting relationship, both of which he's already tried to kill? Jesus, I'm getting WoW flashbacks. To that end, if you want to pair Luz with a guy simply on the basis that she's bi, I mean, Gus is right there. All pubescent and deep voice. Go for him. Oh, by the way, we're introduced to Hunter in the same season that we meet the immaculate and far more interesting Rain Whispers, secret rebel against the Emperor and old flame to Ida. What's happening with them? They get put on a shelf at the end of their debut, meanwhile Hunter still gets to run around being his boring, overplayed self. I'm not exaggerating when I say Hunter's very existence is taking focus away from far more interesting characters and ideas, both old and new. And the fact that he's so integral to the Emperor's plans and somehow a personal favorite of Dana's means we're gonna be seeing a lot more of his intrusive trite for the rest of the show. There's so much more we could have done with the first half of the season if Hunter just wasn't a factor. We could have explored Ida and Rain's relationship a little more. We could have had an episode that does more with Willow and Gus to keep them from being the bit characters they are rapidly turning out to be. We could have done more with King's past and family that wasn't just breadcrumbs meant to keep us watching. And yeah, I've said the stuff with him is objectively good, but the fact remains that we've seen this exact same character in so many other places and done so piss poorly that the well has long since been poisoned. Poisoned with poor piss. So why did this happen? Why did the Owl House give us such a rich and diverse cast of characters, and then decide to spend a good chunk of it fleshing out this walking edgefest? And why is so much of the fandom just eating this stuff up despite how fucking omnipresent and overplayed it is everywhere else? Well, we've talked about stuff like this before. It's the same reason that there was so much focus on Amity's character throughout both seasons. It's the reason that Luz as a protagonist is overlooked and underappreciated by the fandom. It's why the audience was quick to view Ida as a good mom to Luz over Camilla. It's because, and I hate to say this, but it's because the show has a white favoritism problem and the fandom makes it worse. That's literally the long and short of it. It's the only way I can rationalize all these narrative decisions. It's not that I'm saying that the showrunners hate their non-white cast members, far from it. Luz is still one of the greatest protagonists I've seen come out of a kids show in quite some time. Willow and Gus are awesome supporting characters in their own right, and the stuff they are given, when they're actually given anything, is really good. And the Owl House is still one of the most diverse and respectful shows on the market when it comes to representation of all kinds. The white favoritism at play is nowhere near as bad as I've seen it in other properties, but it's unmistakably there. It's why Amity had so much more character development in season 1 than Willow or Gus, despite being the latest addition in Luz's social circle. It's why they pushed for her and Luz to get together while Luz and Willow would have been just as cute of a ship with less contrivance. It's why so many people were willing to forgive and even excuse Lilith's villainy and what she did to Ida in the past, because Lilith was fair-skinned and hot. Come season 2, and this problem has only gotten worse with the debut of Hunter and Amity's dad for some reason, but we're not talking about him. Now we're taking even more focus away from the non-white main and supporting cast, and this time we're not even given a cute gay ship as recompense. But the audience, despite priding itself on watching shows with diversity, are so fucking enamored with the troubled white boy that they lapped it up. They're too busy gushing over what a wooby he is and demanding that Ida adopts him or something that they don't really stop to consider, hang on, has Willow really not gotten an episode this season? Some people say that it's Disney's fault for giving the show a shortened third season with no guarantee of a fourth, compelling Dana to salvage what she could from the cutting room floor. But even if that was the case, that would still mean she sacrificed character work for the non-white characters in favor of the white characters. Hell, for as much as I loved Eclipse Lake, it's practically a microcosm of this mindset. Willow, Luz, and Gus are all shunted into the B plot with little more than just jokes to justify their scant screen time, while everyone's white faves get to take center stage and have all the good character work. And I realize people might just see this as me bad-mouthing Dana Terrace by saying she exhibits white favoritism, but I'm not saying that she's a racist monster for any of this. Just that she, like all of us, have personal biases that we're never quite done re-examining. That goes for you, me, and everyone watching this show. White favoritism is a problem in this series, and the fandom makes it worse. How much worse? People have actually gone on record saying that Bellows is handsome. Dwell on that for a minute, why don't you? And some of you might say, well, Mikaila, I'm not hearing a whole lot of constructive criticism. What would you have done differently if white favoritism is such a problem in this show? Simple. I would have nixed Hunter, nixed the shitty Lilith redemption, and just kept her as Bellows' second in command. Two birds, one stone. That way we have more breathing room for the non-white cast to have character growth. Maybe make Hunting for Palisman about Luce, Willow, and Gus saving the Palisman from Lilith. Perhaps have an episode where Willow is anxious about Luce's new relationship with Amity wedging her out of the social circle because, let's not kid ourselves, Amity has left Willow friendless before. Maybe give us more of that delicious NB rep with Rain content perhaps? Don't you see how much better things could be when you aren't just stuck eating the same old white bread in every other show you consume? And I want to make it clear that despite being a clear problem in the show, it's far from a deal breaker. While clearly subject to her own vices, Terrace has a better head on her shoulders than most. I don't see this problem getting exponentially worse unless she starts listening to the fandom on what to focus on. And even then, it's all but too late to listen. But, like it or not, Hunter's gonna be here for the rest of the show. What will happen with him? I don't know. Maybe something good, maybe something bad. Maybe he'll just be Dana's pain sink character and we get to see shitty things happen to him over and over again to vent her hatred of happy endings on. That might be interesting to see. In any case, my interest in Hunter will only extend as far as his being a window into how enjoyably evil Bellows can be. I'll just be here hoping for more Willow or Rain or Camilla in the future.